And we are live for the pre-show. The study group starts in about 10 minutes. So if you're watching this on the replay, you can fast forward to watch the beginning of this, or you can stick around and watch the pre-show as I talk to people in the chat room. Mel in Birmingham and Andrews in Austin and the others that will be joining. If I can get my headset in, I'll be able to hear myself. Here we go. Let's get these plugged in. Test 2, test. That sounds good. Let's see how cameras work. That's a camera. Hi, camera. Is the lighting good? The light's in my glasses there. Try to minimize that. These things never move, of course, so it's one of those kinds of things. Let's get this going. You can help me with nothing at the moment, unless you'd like to do a study group, Siri. Let's play that. Now let's look at these cameras. It all looks good. Looks fine. It looks great. If you're watching this, if you're watching this on the Ustream side, the YouTube side, the YouTube stream side, then there's no chat there. You have to go to professormesser.com/live to see the chat. And for me to see the chat, which might be a little more interesting if I can actually see it. Of course, there's an update to Google Chrome. Well, that will just have to wait. Let's get some things straightened out on the screen. I'm already getting some messages coming in, so I need to make myself not here. There we go. Now I'm invisible. What else are we doing? What do we got going on here? We're at 7 minutes till we start. And all of that's going lovely. Hope everybody's day is going well. Certainly going swimmingly here. If you're on the Professor Messer website, there's a live chat room that's available, live event chat that is available when you watch the live events. The live event chat isn't there when there's not a live event. So if you're watching this on the replay and you're wondering, where's the live event chat? It's because it's a replay and it's not live. I really should just consider leaving it up all the time, although that may be confusing as well for the people that are trying to find a live event chat and see one and think there's a live event. See how this works? The things I have to go through here. But it's going fine. Let's see how things are looking on YouTube. Make sure streaming is good. Streaming is good. We will have the email and Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus reminders going out in about a minute. So we should see a bunch of folks join in about that time. But it's the summer. A lot of people aren't in classes or they're not doing this kind of thing. I got to get rid of my vocal zone. All right. All of this looks good. Don't forget about Socrative. So I'm looking at on my screen that's in front of me, Socrative.com. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word. You can answer questions along with everyone else. How are we doing on temperature? Let's see. It's good for now. We may end up turning that down some. All right, chat room. Are we set? Do we have everything we need? We got hot coffee. I got switchers working. We are recording. You can see Cylon's down here. Recording everything. I'm recording also on the TriCaster and recording, of course, on YouTube. That's three things. Let's see. We got, all right, the tweet went out. I really do need to get rid of this vocal sound. Sorry. But that's what you get for attending the pre-show. You get to enjoy me not being able to communicate properly. Is there rain? Is there going to be rain here? It's a good question. Well, it's like I'm missing a little bit. Maybe quiet for the study group. So that's good. All right. What else we got going on? Does that set up the graphics? It is. Program is set. It's all good. So now it's really about getting this thing going. And did some other folks retweet it? They liked the tweet. Thank you for liking my tweet. That there is a live event. Did everyone show up? Are they showing up? You always wonder, is the stream even going out? What's happening? Yes, the stream is going out. Even if it wasn't, I would sit here and do this alone. I don't really have a problem with that. Probably would be pretty good, except for the part where people have to answer questions and then get like nothing on the screen. So right now we have some people at least put something up so you got answers, just be blank. Well, we got a tie at 0%. It's a 5-way tie. It's not what you're shooting for. I need just one person. So really the goal for the study group is to get just that one person joining, and then at least there can be an answer on here. We were talking patch panels in the main chat earlier today. I'm busy punching down a new patch panel in what I call my data center, which is really a closet that's over there. But it's been a mess. It's been a mess ever since I really got the studio up and running here, and it really needs to be properly terminated connections. They're coming in from the outside, just on RJ45 connections. I need to punch everything down, stick it on the wall so it never moves, and then I can do all kinds of things inside here. The room name on Socrative is Professor Messer, all one word. In fact, I should just type it in the chat. Room name, Professor Messer. Make sure I spell my own name correctly. And I did. What are we doing on time? We got a minute and a half. Stretch the back out. Think about what we're doing here today. I think we're in pretty good shape. Next step will be seeing if you know these questions and answers. That's what I always worry about. Do I make them too hard? Are they too easy? I think I put a couple in here that are really easy, but sometimes I make them really easy, or what I think is really easy, and they turn out not to be. So I have to see if I put enough curveballs in there to keep everyone thinking. See if that works. All right. Well, we're in pretty good shape here. I have a big screen that's in front of me. It's above the monitor that you see directly in front of me. There's a large, like 50-inch television, 47, 42, whatever I put up there. It's a big TV that I have all the switching information, so I can see what's up, what I have on the preview, what I have going on in the program. I can see the times. I can make sure things are recording. I can see the stream is up. There's a lot of status. I can see audio. I got a good view of that, and it's just cut off a little bit on the right side, so I'm having to do this. It's on a set of wheels, so I wheel it in for the study groups, and when I'm done, I wheel it back over here because I use that for my Xbox. So I think you see where the priorities are. All right, it's 12 noon straight up on my side. You'll see that in a few seconds. On your side as well, that's the case, and I think it's time to get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2016 Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group. This is the monthly study group where I ask you questions and you online can participate and answer those questions. And we all get to see how well we do. Hopefully, I've got some good questions for you this month. There's quite a bit going on here at the studios. I was mentioning in the pre-show a lot of work I have going on with punching down some new connections. There's a lot of networking going on. I have a new network switch arriving today for doing some power over Ethernet built into the switch rather than using something in the middle to power those. This is one where I'm just expanding some things out. There's a new project going on. Maybe we'll talk about that in the after show. Not specifically with Professor Messer. This is a separate project, more of a hobby project I have going on that could be interesting. But some of you may be interested in seeing about that. So we'll talk a little bit more about those as well. There's a lot going on here, as usual. If you want to always keep up with what we're doing, you can always see what's happening on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or wherever it happens to be by typing in professormesser.com/Twitter/YouTube/Instagram/Google+ whatever it happens to be. And don't forget about the discounted vouchers that you can get 10% off any of your CompTIA exams. You can find those at professormesser.com/vouchers. Some of you are probably aware that all of my courses are available to watch online, every single one of those videos I put out there, so that you can watch them from beginning to end with no gaps. But some of you would like to be able to take these offline. So there is an offline version you can purchase as well. You can purchase just the course notes if that's something you might want to use. You could purchase the MP3 files, which also include the course notes. You could also purchase all of the videos and the MP3 files and the course notes in one fell swoop. If you want to know more about that, you can check it out, professormesser.com/getnetplus, Plus. So we can absolutely look at those. Now, if you are online, you want to participate today and answer questions and see how you do with the quiz, then you need to go to Socrative. This is an absolutely free service that you could use. You go to Socrative.com. You can do this on an extra tab on your browser. You can do this on your mobile device. There are also mobile apps available. You want the Socrative student app since you're the student. There's a Socrative teacher app that I might be able to use. I do everything in my browser, though. Maybe you do as well. Once you get to Socrative, click the student login button and go to the room name Professor Messer. That's the part you have to type in. Make sure you type it correctly, or you're not going to see any of the questions that are here. So make sure you type very specifically all one word, PROFESSOR and that way you'll be in the right room and you'll see a question there that says, how long have you been studying for your Network Plus certification? In fact, the question itself, you'll see some options there. This is what I see on my side. You can see less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 months to a year, over a year, or I already have my Network Plus certification. Right now, less than 3 months and 3 to 6 months are about 71% of everyone who's here. So a good chunk of you are just kind of getting started with Network Plus. It's kind of the beginning of the summer here in this particular hemisphere. And so things are getting warmer. School is out for a lot of folks, but a lot of us like to do some things over the summer, or maybe we're taking summer classes. This is a great time to get your networking certification. The Network Plus is the networking certification that a lot of people start with as their entry-level cert. The certification itself is called the N10006. That's the version of the Network Plus exam that most people are using. It's the latest version. It's the only version currently that you could take. So that's a good one to choose from. It is one that was released in February 28th of 2015. So it's been available for just over a year now. So that is the latest version, the most current version. When you sign up for an exam, you'll see that it lists the N10006. The reason I mention this is that if you gather any study materials, you should make sure that all of your study materials say the N10006. If they say the N10005 or the 004 or something other than N10006, then you have some outdated materials. You want to be sure to use the latest materials whenever you're working through these things. You don't want to walk into your exam and not be as prepared as you possibly could be. So make sure you always have those. We're really expecting an update to this somewhere around February of 2018. There are these 3-year cycles that CompTIA goes through. So you have plenty of time to work through your exam. All of your materials right now that are using the N10006 will be applicable for years going forward. But hopefully you'll have your certification done in just a few months. Well, let's jump into the questions. I've created a number of questions for you. I've tried to make them, as I mentioned in the pre-show, try to make them a little bit more difficult. Some I think are really easy. We might even start off with a couple of easy ones, and hopefully they'll get a little bit harder as we go along. I don't know. If you don't know this one, this is going to be one you either know or don't know. We'll jump right into the question. And the question is, which of these would be the best use of Netstat? Now, I'm talking specifically about Netstat, but Netstat itself has a number of capabilities. In fact, it's a very interesting thing to use. I'm not going to give you too much here on what Netstat does because I've listed out a number of different things that I want you to match with what the best use of Netstat might be. These are the best use of Netstat. Would it be to view all active connections to your computer? Would it be to determine the IP address associated with an FQDN? Would it be to view the IP configuration of your laptop computer? Would it be to test the reachability of a remote server? Or would Netstat be the best use of Netstat in this list be to view the list of NetBIOS names on a remote device? One of these really is the best use of Netstat. But as with many things on the CompTIA exam, there might be a number of things in here that you could also do. Could be multiple things here that Netstat can do, but only one is really going to be the best use. That's one of the common things that you'll see on a CompTIA exam is they will give you a lot of options, but they always ask you for the best use of something. So if you think you know what the answer is, don't answer in the chat room. Stop Googling around for whatever Netstat is or FQDN or any of these other things. You should go into this cold. You should go to Socrative.com, go to the room name Professor Messer. You click that student login and go to that room name Professor Messer. It's very easy to work through all of those pieces. It's one where whenever you start working through the details of this, you have to know about so many different aspects of networking, and Netstat's one of these things you may end up using quite a bit. It's a pretty flexible utility. It has a lot of things that it can do, so this may be a little more difficult than I might think. I think it's really easy, though. I think most of you will do pretty well with this particular question. So which would be the best use of Netstat? Let's see what it might be. And let's see how we did. Well, you can see the vast majority of you answered A, view all active connections to your computer. But would that really be the best use of Netstat? Why would it not be? Determine the IP address associated with an FQDN. That's a fully qualified domain name, but I did not write it out intentionally because we often use that abbreviation in networking. Viewing the IP configuration of your laptop computer, I can do that with Netstat. So why isn't that the right answer? Nobody chose C. Testing reachability of a remote server, probably not a Netstat feature. And viewing the list of NetBIOS names on a remote device, clearly not Netstat. Testing the reachability of a remote server, actually, I could do with Netstat, sort of passively. I could see if somebody was connected to a remote server with Netstat, which sort of gives away the answer. If 92% of you answered A, sure sounds like you probably got that one right. Let's talk about Netstat just a moment. This is an abbreviation for a utility called network statistics. There are a lot of different operating systems that use Netstat. In fact, almost all operating systems will use this Netstat utility. You can certainly go out and type in Netstat and get an overview, but there are some very specific command line options that might help you in troubleshooting, and a very common one is Netstat-A. The specific parameters that you might put onto Netstat might be different depending on the operating system you're using and depending on the version of Netstat that you're using, but generally across the board, Netstat-A will show you all active connections to your computer. This can be really useful if you're trying to troubleshoot and determine who's connecting to my computer right now, what IP address are they coming from, what program are they using to connect into my computer, what's acting as a server that they might have an inbound connection. This is something you commonly see with things like malware. Whenever you're infected with malware, you don't ever want to be in a situation where you're connecting out to another device, or another device, even worse, might be connecting to you. You can confirm that by using the Netstat-A. If you want to see the actual binary, the program that is running on your computer, that is creating or allowing this server connection. You could also include a B with this. So you do a netstat -AB, for instance. We'll just combine them into the same command line. I put -B here just simply, but you can also combine these things together and make a very involved and complex netstat query. Netstat in will just give you IP addresses. So you might even want to do a netstat-ABN and does all three of those at one time. It's a very useful utility. You should absolutely become familiar with it, not only because it's on the Network Plus certification, but this is a utility that you will use throughout your networking, security, network-related IT career. Put it that way. Even if you're doing software development, Netstat becomes really, really useful. It's a great utility to have. It's right there in your operating system. Why would you not take advantage of that? It just makes perfect sense. So if you are some of the folks that said the best use of Netstat would be to view all active connections to your computer, 92% of you got that one absolutely right. Well, it was a pretty good start, I think, to the questions. And as I mentioned, kind of an easy one to get things going. Let's do another question, though. This one doesn't have really much to say as part of the question. It's more of a video daily double, or really a picture of what this is. It's, what connector is this? What connector is this? Did I even give you options for this one? Let's find out. No. So this is a little more difficult. I'm glad I jumped into this and didn't make this a multiple choice for you. I simply, and if you're in Socrative, you'll see this, I simply gave you a fill in the blank, and you now have to fill in the blank. You would fill in that blank by going to Socrative.com to the room name Professor Messer. Click that student login and put in the room name Professor Messer. Let's give you a better picture. You can see it in Socrative pretty well. You can zoom it up. Here's a little better picture of that one right there. What is that connector? These are ones that you will see. It looks like it's definitely for networking. There's my tip. There's my question for you. Is this used for networking? Yes, it is. You'll notice for this particular case, these are clearly fiber connectors, so that might help us with determining what the name is. Very often with fiber connectors, you always see them in pairs. That's because, of course, the light only goes one direction. So you usually need one of those fibers for the transmit side and the other fibers for the receive side. So there's really communication going in two different directions. Could you do half duplex through fiber? You could, but we generally don't. You generally see this as a full duplex where one of the fibers is dedicated to transmit and one of the fibers is dedicated to receive. And you'll see here they're even paired up, which makes it easy if you're plugging it in on one side or the other. You don't accidentally reverse it. That can be a challenge with other fiber types because it's very easy to send a transmit and plug it into transmit on the other side, and then nothing really works. Very common to flip back and forth and get those done. Well, since this is a fill in the blank, let's look through. You can't see the answers. I can see them on my side. So let's flip through them. You folks are all over the place with these connector types. A lot of you got this one right, though. A lot of you did very well on this one. Not quite the overwhelming number that we had with the last questions. Most of you are just saying fiber optics. Well, that's not good enough. I want to know what the connector type was. So it's very specific. The question was, what connector is this? I guess technically fiber optics would be right, but that's not the answer we're looking for. I'd like you to be a little more specific with the connector type. So let's find out what connector type this is. If you answered LC, then you had this one absolutely correct. LC, nobody really knows what the name of it is. We sort of have an idea of what it is. Lucent connector is a common one because Lucent's a company that has fiber and fiber connectors that they create. Could be a local connector. I'm not sure why that would be a good answer, but apparently that's one of the names associated with it. And then little connector. It's not quite as little as you might think these days. It's a little big in fiber terms, but it's not as big as maybe the ST connectors, which are some of the larger BNC type connectors that you connect in. They're very difficult to mess up, to lose because they're so big. They go on these connectors and they lock in. This one locks in as well. You can see the little locking mechanism that's on the side here. I even got this up. Can I show? There it is. So you can see the little locking mechanism that's on the side. You plug it in, it snaps in place. So it's very hard to pull that fiber out unless you push the top of it and release it and pull it out. Some of you on the answer said ST. It's not ST. ST is much bigger than these are. Some of you said MTRJ. MTRJ is even smaller than these. So it's not MTRJ. If you answered LC for this connector type, and this is one you got absolutely correct. And if I look at the list, I think about half of you got this one correct. So well done. You folks know your fiber connectors, and you do need to know your fiber connectors for the Network Plus certification exam. It's an important part of that. It's in the exam objectives. You should absolutely know all of both the copper and the fiber connectors for the Network Plus exam. And if you never run into these, it can be difficult to memorize. So make sure you have a look at all the pictures in my videos. Make sure you Google them and have some other images come up. You want to go through and try to figure these out as much as you can. Let's do another question then. Let's jump into this one. Which of these would best describe biometrics? So I've got a number of things that we might apply to what would best describe biometrics. Let's go through this list. Would it be a switch port security mechanism? Would it be long-term system statistics? Would it be a way to create hashes? Would it be a physical security control? Or would it be a method of viewing open network ports? And actually with this one, I can see at least 2 or 3 that might apply in this list to biometrics. But of course, I'm asking you for the best description of how biometrics might apply. So let's see if we happen to know what it is. You may be able to figure these out too. If you think you know, then you should go to Socrative.com to the student login and get a room named Professor Messer. Don't Google biometrics. Stop Googling things. Don't put it in the chat room. You should, of course, just go through and see if you can answer online. And I can see how you're doing with these answers, trying to figure out these pieces. For the Network Plus exam, you have to know a lot of different topics, not just the abbreviations and acronyms that we've created, but you have to know how to apply some of these technologies out into the world. And this is one where you do really need to know what biometrics is most often used with. These examples that I have in this particular answer can go either way. There's some of them I think that biometrics might apply to multiples of these, but of course with the exam we're looking for the best description of biometrics. So let's see how we did with this one. We'll flip back. And how do we do? Well, again, I'm not doing very well at stumping anyone that's out there. A physical security control, 95% of you, it's almost a given if 95% are going to say that's what it is. A switch port security mechanism, I think technically that would be difficult to apply to biometrics since that's something, switch port security is something that occurs automatically. It's something that occurs instantaneously. Looking at packets and traffic on the network. Long-term system statistics has nothing to do with long-term system statistics. A way to create hashes, well, I guess you could use part of your body and integrate it with some type of system that could then create a hash. So you could have a hash for your eye, a hash for your fingerprint. Technically, that's true. You could do that. But that's not the best description of what biometrics is. Biometrics is generally used as a physical security control because it's part of you. It's part of what you do. You often see physical security controls implemented a number of different ways. It could certainly be a physical door lock. It could be an electronic key card that you're using. It could be a smart card that you're using in conjunction with a PIN to do some multi-factor authentication. Or in the case of biometrics, you're using your hand, you're using a fingerprint, using some part of you to be able to provide access. And very commonly, it's physical access to a room. It's very common to see people use a key card and use their hand to gain access to a data center, for example. That way you know exactly who's entering the data center, and because they use their hand, it would be very difficult for it not to be them that is entering that room, which can certainly be incredibly important to be able to work through. This is a good one whenever you're working through the details of these exams, that you keep in mind all of these different ways that these technologies are used, and you're able to pick out, of course, what the most common or the best use of them might be. So if you're one of the folks that did answer D, a physical security control, well, you got that one absolutely right. I really didn't fool anybody with that one, but I do have some coming up that are much more difficult. So hopefully I'll be able to fool some of you with those. There are so many different things to know on the Network Plus certification, and that's why I've created a set of notes that goes along with the videos. This way you can watch the videos and follow along in the notes, or if you're someone who just doesn't take very good notes, I have some notes that I've created directly from the videos as if you were sitting there and reading these notes yourself. And it's something that a lot of people say helps them out whenever they're studying. It doesn't replace your book and it doesn't replace the videos, but when you're trying to study up and get those last few things stuck in your brain before going to take your exam, you may find that the course notes can come in very handy. Everything is in here from my videos. All of the subnetting, all of the charts that I've created, all of the graphs that I've created, text from my videos, the important text from my videos, images and pictures of all of those different fiber types and copper types. They're all in here. You can find out about this at professormesser.com/NPCN, Network Plus Course Notes. This is a place where you'll see, well, I'll just bring up the course notes. They're big. There's 15 pages of notes provided in PDF format. So you immediately get access to these and you're able to download them. I'm going to scroll down here. Here's all the different connector types, for example, that you might run into. I've got fiber connectors in there. There's the fiber connectors, so you can memorize what those happen to be. They're all in the course notes. They're all available for you to see there. And every dollar from this goes back to keeping the website up and running. Having these free videos available is great, but whenever the monthly bill comes up for web hosting, they somehow want me to pay it every month. So I want to thank everyone who purchases the course notes, because this goes a long way to keeping the website running. It goes directly to making all of this continue to happen. So thank you very much for your continued support with that. Well, with that, you can always go out to professormesser.com/NPCN to learn more. And of course, there's more here as well. I have more questions for you. This one might be a little more difficult because it is a wireless standard question. A lot of people have sent me notes when you register and say, I want more questions on wireless standards. Well, here's one. In fact, it's one that I've given you a fill in the blank. I'm not even telling you what the standards are. You're going to have to use a fill in the blank. This is one, by the way, that from a fill in the blank perspective, you could certainly get a fill in the blank question on your exam. CompTIA calls these performance-based questions. You could be put at a command line and asked to do something. You might be asked to match things from one side to the other. It might be a fill in the blank. It might be putting things in a particular order. All of those are in here. And this is a very good example of this because I want people to be able to answer the wireless standard that operates in both 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. Some of you know this one. Some of you maybe don't know this one so much. Some of you are going back and forth over this one. Some of you are giving me two answers. Is it two standards? Is it just one standard? We're going to have to find out which one it happens to be. Some of you are spot on. You know it. You knew immediately. You sent them in. Yep, I know that one. Some of you, no, you didn't get that one so much. So I don't want to appear smug, but this is not a 95%er that we're seeing coming through. We can't really see the percentages on this, obviously, because I did not put down what all these are. And some of you are putting down some things that aren't standards in the wireless world. So maybe just taking a guess. Is it banana? No, it's not banana. But an excellent try. Anyway, I get to see all of these coming through. That's why you don't see them on your side. You don't see the cheeky answers that are coming through. That's not professional. We don't want to have that there. But instead, I do get to see that a lot of you got this one right. I would say at least 50% of you are getting the right answer with this one. Well, which standard does operate in 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz? Well, the answer may surprise you. The answer is 802.11n, and it is exclusively 802.11n, which may be kind of surprising, really, because as many of you know, there is a standard that has been released after 802.11n. That's the 802.11ac. And the AC standard, you would think, is better because it's newer. It's certainly faster, but it is not the correct answer here. Let's talk about 802.11n. It does operate and have the ability to operate as part of the standard at 5 gigahertz and or 2.4 gigahertz. So you could get an 802.11n access point that would run at 5 gigahertz, or it might run at 2.4 gigahertz, or it may be what we call dual band. So it would have multiple of these. So it might run at both 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz simultaneously. The N standard has bandwidth, or a theoretical bandwidth, that you could have through it at approximately 600 megabits per second. It uses something called MIMO to make that happen. That is the multiple input, multiple output. We often refer to this as the number of simultaneous streams that can communicate back and forth to the access point at any particular time. And a summary of this is here. So you can see, obviously, the 802.11n is currently the only wireless standard that has two separate frequencies that are part of the standard itself. Notice that we do have 5 gigahertz up here with A, 2.4 gigahertz with B and G. Obviously, both are available in the 802.11n standard. But here's something I think tripped up a lot of people, was that the 802.11 AC standard technically is only a 5 gigahertz standard. But wait a second, you may have an 802.11 AC access point in your home, and you know that you're connecting to it over 2.4 gigahertz. You've probably even seen 2.4 gigahertz in the configuration of your AC access point or router. What's up with that? And of course, it's because the 802.11 AC standard does run at 5 gigahertz, but if you need 2.4 gigahertz, it is backward compatible to 802.11n. So if you're running over 2.4 gigahertz and you know you have an AC access point, you're really running 802.11n for the 2.4 gigahertz stuff, and then you're running AC for the 5 gigahertz stuff. That's what's going on. Look at the speeds though. 802.11 AC, if you are using those 5 gigahertz speeds, 8 maximum streams, each stream running at 866.7 megabits per second for a total speed of 6.9 gigabits per second, or 6,934 megabits per second. It seems like a lot, isn't it? Well, it is. Very few people have 8 simultaneous streams going that are also running at 5 gigahertz, that are in an area close enough to the antennas to get that total maximum theoretical throughput. But you can see that multiple devices connecting to this access point and being able to communicate over those multiple streams at those high rates of speed can obviously provide a lot of connectivity for a lot of different devices simultaneously. So that can be very, very useful to have that there. A lot of you did answer 802.11n. Some of you said B and G. Some of you said BG and N. Some of you said AC. Unfortunately, the only answer here, or fortunately for those of you that got it right, the answer here is 802.11n is the only wireless standard currently that does operate or can operate in both 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz simultaneously. Pretty nice. Well done with that one. Let's do another question. Let's jump into these. I'm checking the chat room. Some of you are asking about backing up and asking about the course notes real quick, asking if you can print the course notes. You can absolutely print the course notes. The PDF files that I create for my course notes are not protected. You can print them out. You can put them on all of your local devices as long as you're the only one using them. It's a personal license that you're using. So please put it on your local computer, put it on your mobile devices, wherever you go. I want you to have access to these, and printing it out is a perfectly good way to do it as well. Let's do another question. Here's one that this one it came up in the chat room not recently. It was one I wrote down since last month. But the question specifically says, what kind of network topology defines every device as both a client and a server? Well, I gave you some multiple choices for this one. So no answering in the chat room. You'll be able to figure this out. Is it client server? Is it hybrid, peer-to-peer, point-to-point, or ring? One of these will be the correct network topology that defines every device as both a client and a server. So hopefully you know what this one is. There's a whole section of the CompTIA exam objectives for Network Plus that talks about different topologies. And in my videos, I talk about some of the advantages and the disadvantages for each one of those topology types. So this is one you should know. You can kind of see the question there. Can't see it very well. There we go. Client and a server. If you think you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. So finally, yes, good. Glad you think this is an easy one. I feel bad. I thought the other ones were the easy ones. If you know what the client and the server and the network topology and how they all interoperate with these, maybe you'll be able to answer these pieces as well. I think most of you know this one, though. I'll take a peek. Yeah, most of you did pretty well with this one. Nobody's taking the ones I stuck in here to see if you would happen to know what the answers might be. I guess that's a good thing, though. Sometimes people will send me a note saying, I got the questions right. I'm doing fine. I got through your entire study group. I got every question correct, which means you're probably ready for your exam if you're doing that well with those pieces. Sometimes people will send me emails and say, I found an error in a book I'm reading. Like if you're finding the errors in a book, you're probably pretty close to being ready to take your exam. Let's see how we did with this one. What kind of topology does define every device as both a client and a server? It's hard to make this one even a little more difficult, but let's see how we did anyway with this one. Well, not as much as an overwhelming number of people answering one particular question as the others, but you can see still a good number, 72%. Certainly a majority says peer-to-peer, but I did ask defining every device is both a client and a server. So of course, 12% said client server, which that makes sense. It's in the name of the question. Hello, that makes perfect sense. However, client server is not the correct answer here. In fact, as you probably have guessed, the 71% of you that said peer-to-peer did get this one absolutely correct. A peer-to-peer network is really defined as one where every device is a client and every device is a server. It's very interesting, the applications that take advantage of this. Obviously, some of the most common and controversial ones have been with music sharing services through the years, and where, of course, you not only were able to grab files and pull them down to your machine, but, of course, share them as well. It's very commonly done with BitTorrent. There are a number of very well-established utilities and programs out there that use a client-server model, but peer-to-peer is one where every device is both the client and the server simultaneously. The client-server model is one where you are either a client or you are a server. Usually there's a centralized server and there are many clients connecting to that server. A web server, for instance, is a client-server environment. But a peer-to-peer environment, very common to see with things like BitTorrent. It's very easy to deploy. It's low cost. It's very easy to transfer files this way because you don't have a centralized server that can get bogged down. Instead, you can take advantage of having all of these different devices out there, and everyone is sharing the load across all of them. So useful to have that there. But obviously, because everybody is their own client and everybody is their own server, it's difficult to administer. It's difficult to set up a network infrastructure for this. It's almost impossible to secure this. And that's why you see for many environments, especially in large organizations and medium-sized organizations, you generally don't see people using peer-to-peer technologies because it is so difficult to secure. Malware loves peer-to-peer. They use peer-to-peer all the time to do things that they're working through. So you, of course, want to be able to work through those and understand the pieces of them and have all of those components available to you and to be able to work with them. But peer-to-peer it's something we use all the time, sometimes at work and certainly when we're not at work. So it's a technology you should certainly know about. There's an entire video I have just on topology types, and you should certainly have a look at those if you have any questions, because all of these that I listed are different topology types. There's the client server, which we've talked about, the hybrid, the peer-to-peer, the point-to-point, and the ring. Make sure you know all of those. They are in the CompTIA exam objectives, so you should know them. If you answered C, peer-to-peer, you got this question on the kind of topology defining every device as both client and server. Absolutely correct. Well done with that. One of the things that might help you as you're working through all of these different aspects of the exam is to get more hands-on. My folks at GTS Learning, my friends over there, have created these online labs so that you don't have to build your own VMs. You don't have to find your own labs to go through. You don't have to stumble through what you think might be the important things to learn. Instead, they've created a series of labs online that you connect to with just your browser. And now you've got seems like an entire data center of virtual machines and labs already configured, already defined, and ready for you to step through. You can find out about these at professormesser.com/netlabs. It's not just labs. They also have a Network Plus book, the same Network Plus book I used to create these videos, are out there on the /Net Labs. Also, practice questions are available for those things as well, and they're all online. They're so easy to use. You don't have to have any additional software on your computer as long as you have an HTML5 compatible browser, which most of them are these days. You can absolutely go through and click a button and you have instant access. It's this remote access, remote console view into all of these different servers and all of these different devices. And they even give you a step-by-step graphical breakdown of how to complete the lab. So you're never trying to figure out, what do I do next? They take you through every step of exactly what you should be clicking on, what you should be typing. There's never a question. And if you go through my link also, you get a special price. If you go to GTS Learning directly, you would have to pay them a little bit more money. But because you're on this study group or you're watching the replay of this study group, you can use the special link professormesser.com/netlabs and get a year's access to these net labs for $99. Also, if you follow that link, there's a way to register for a free hour. So you can try these labs out yourself. You don't know, $99, do I really want to spend that on labs? Should I do it myself? Well, try it for an hour, see if it works for you. You can do all of that, see all of the details of the book and all of the questions, and everything is available there by following the link professormesser.com/netlabs. And I want to thank the folks at GTS Learning for their support and their sponsoring of our study groups. Let's go on to the next question. Doing pretty well on time today, thankfully. And I've got more questions here. Which of the following is commonly used to monitor device interfaces? Monitoring a device interface is in the CompT exam objectives. It's physically written in there that you need to know about how to monitor different interfaces. And in fact, it's an important part of maintaining anybody's network. So it makes sense that it's there. But of course, you need the right technology to be able to monitor this interface. How would you do that? Would you do it through HTTP, RDP, SNMP, IMAP, or AFP? I could use a couple, 2 or 3 of these actually. But of course, I'm asking you, which of the following is commonly used to monitor device interfaces? You want to use the common one to be able to do that. Make sure that you go out to Socrative.com, click the student login, and go to the room Professor Messer to be able to see that. You'll, of course, be able to answer the question as well. I think most of you might know this one. This might be a little more difficult than the others have been. You can see also I just gave you abbreviations. That's one common theme that you'll see on the Network Plus exam, is that there are a ton of acronyms you have to know, different protocols, different interface types, different fiber connectors. There's just a ton of different abbreviations. And this particular question is the same thing. I didn't want to spell out for you what these abbreviations are. I want you to know inherently what these are when you see them. We use these abbreviations commonly. One of the things I always laugh about whenever I'm working with people that are taking these exams is, why do I have to memorize all of this information that I'll never use? Except I look through the Network Plus exam objectives and we use this stuff all the time. There's nothing in there I can point out and say, well, we never use that, because it's actually pretty accurate. We do run into that. People do refer to it. And we do talk about these OSI models and we refer to them with these certain values. I constantly have conversations with people that say, you never talk about the OSI. It's worthless to know. We never use that, except I used it all the time when I was in a role where I communicated with other people. I was out there in a systems engineer role, working in security, and every day, multiple times a day, it was a very common way to get across to other people what we were talking about, and everybody was on the same line, the same page, if you will. And this is one where you do have to know the answer to this one. Which of the following is commonly used to monitor device interfaces? Well, not the overwhelming number that we've seen so far. We've kind of got an interesting list here, but 68% did say SNMP, but 14%, another double digits here, did say RDP, and then we've got single digits for the others. So if we wanted to go with the crowd, I guess we could say SNMP, but is it really SNMP when we're talking about monitoring interfaces? This is why this is important, though, is that this interface connection is the first step to having all of these devices communicate across your network. And obviously, to be able to know the health of these devices, we need to have connectivity. So we have to be able to monitor the devices. We have to be able to look for problems, especially at the network level and maybe even higher up the stack as well. Speaking of the OSI model, whenever you start seeing problems occur, in fact, you might see some errors accumulating on a particular interface that might be indicative of an issue with that server. It might be an issue with the switch that you're connecting to. So there might be even a bigger problem. Maybe there's congestion. You need to be able to see exactly what's going on in your environment. And this is something where you also might want to get operating system details. How's the CPU of the device performing? How much disk space is available? How's memory in there and being able to work with it? One very common way, in fact, probably the most standardized way you'll find for communicating to these devices is to use the SNMP protocol, the Simple Network Management Protocol. SNMP is incredibly useful. Almost all devices have the ability to turn on SNMP so that you can access and pull statistics from those devices. I know that I have that in my operating systems that I'm running here. I have it in the modem that's connecting me out to the internet. I have it in my wireless access point that I use in the studio. I have a number of other devices in the studio that I use for audio. It supports SNMP. Other devices for video support SNMP. You can kind of see the video switcher that's over here to this side. There is all kinds of devices that I need to constantly monitor, and SNMP is a great way to do it. It's a common way to do it. There are standardized databases and formats. One common one you'll probably see is called MIB2, MIB2, the Management Information Base 2. This MIB2 is sort of the entry level, the most common set of statistics. You'll often sometimes see devices that will use custom MIBs, and you'll have to take the management information-based definitions and put them into your management program so that it understands all of the different statistics that it can gather from those different devices. So SNMP is something you would absolutely use to monitor interfaces, and that is not the right connection. Let's flip over. There we go. So if you answered C, SNMP, you got this one absolutely right. The 69% of you got this one absolutely right and working through those. Well done with that one. Let's keep this going. I've got other questions for you, and I've got other ones in here to work through. By the way, if you are watching this for continuing education credit, you can receive 1 hour of CEUs for watching any of my live events or watching the replay of my live study groups. And if you are someone who is accumulating CEUs to be able to use for work or to be able to use for renewing certifications, this might be a very good way to do it. And the special code word this month to use for the continuing education units is SNMP. And if you want to be able to receive that continuing education unit, you need to go to either the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link there. It's really Contact Me that shows up on my mobile device and in my email inbox. And you can also put in there that this is the June 2016 Network Plus study group, that the special code word is SNMP. And if you want to write something else there, I look through every single one of these myself and send you the CEU personally. So if there's any other comments you'd like to put in there, you're more than welcome to do it. Any pictures of the family, tell me what you did over the weekend. I like reading all of it. So I want to thank you for putting those in. It's really fun to read through some of those as well. So that's an important thing too. So remember that your code word is SNMP. Send that to me in the Contact Us link at the top or the bottom of the website. And I will send you back an email that says this certifies that you indeed did watch this particular event, and it gives you 1 CEU, and I digitally sign it. So you can't change the certificate to be 100 CEU hours. I'll put a couple zeros on the end. Doesn't work that way because I've digitally signed it. No, you can't make that change and have the digital signature verify that anymore. It has to be exactly what I sent you. So you'll see there's an attachment that's just an ASCII file that has a bunch of weird stuff inside of it. That's the digital signature. The certificate part is what I'm sending you in text that says this indeed certifies that you were here. So very easy. At that point, you can submit it to CompTIA or however you're using it. It's up to whatever organization's accepting these CEUs to be able to accept it. It's up to you to know when you should be doing that. So contact who you're sending the CEU to find out what you do at that point. Let's do more questions, shall we? I have more questions, so we can absolutely go through these. So now let's talk about attack types. These are a little more fun to work through, a little more security piece, kind of a primer for your Security Plus certification you might be working for, but this clearly is on the Network Plus exam. Which of these attack types can provide you with access to a service without authenticating? Now, there are many attack types that would give you access to a service without having to authenticate, but only one in the list that I provided is going to be able to do that. Is it session hijacking, brute force, denial of service, social engineering, or VLAN hopping? One of these, and again, we're looking for the best possible answer here. In fact, really the only possible answer would provide you with access to a service without authenticating every single time. Sort of works through those pieces. So let's see if you happen to know. If you do, don't answer in the chat room. Don't answer, don't Google it. Stop Googling these things. You should simply go to Socrative.com, go to the student login, and go to the Professor Messer room, ProfessorMesser, to be able to work through those. These are good ones. Whenever we're looking through those, people are asking about CEUs. What do I do? Do I send them to CompTIA? Well, CompTIA has an entire process for continuing education units. You should contact them. A lot of people don't even collect CEUs to renew their certifications. They instead will take a higher level CompTIA exam, and they don't have to collect all these CEUs. So it's completely up to you if you use them or not. No Binging it, no Alta Vistaing it. Which ones did I miss? No Yahooing.coming it. None of those. No, the weird duck one. There's a ton of search engines out there. Don't use a search engine. Pretend you're sitting there for the exam and you have to go through these questions and you do all of this. So make sure you go through those pieces. See if we know. In fact, I'm going to take a peek and see how we did. This is such a good one. You folks really don't know this one. So thankfully, finally, I've hit one that has really stymied a few folks. All right. I guess that means we drink. Let's see how we did with this one. Which of the attack types can provide you with access to a service without authenticating? Well, we don't have a majority, but we do at least have we have an almost majority, 47% session hijacking, but 21% says social engineering. 13% said VLAN hopping, and the other dual numbers here, 11% denial of service. Only 6% said brute force. So which one of these would it be in being able to work through them? Well, in this particular case, I'm asking you for a very specific attack type that is giving you access to a service without authenticating. And although there are many ways to do this, in this particular list, the only one that really makes sense is session hijacking. It's one where you're taking advantage of these session IDs that are sent across the network. You're grabbing someone else's session ID, and then you're pretending that you're them. This is something that you don't see very much of anymore. We used to have a big problem with session IDs back in the day, before we were really understanding the security implications of somebody grabbing packets out of the air or off the network and being able to use those. Whenever you log in to Facebook, to Twitter, to any of these services that you might use, you log in and you're provided a session ID. And it becomes kind of a code that you can then give back to the server and let the server know that you've already gone through the authentication process. And that's why whenever you now connect to Facebook or you connect to Twitter or you connect to these online services, you notice that it doesn't ask you for a username and password every time you connect. That would be a pain if every time you wanted to tweet, you had to put a username and password. If every time you wanted to Instagram, you had to put in a username and password, or perhaps even more scary, every time you wanted to use your bank account online and you have already logged in, well, every time you want to do a transaction, you'd have to provide a username and password. So instead of doing that, we can have the server send you a session ID. And it's a code that only you have. And that way, if you ever communicate back to the server, you can give your session ID and the server can say, oh, you authenticated recently. I see you have a session ID. I'm going to go ahead and allow you access and perform this function without you having to go through the authentication process again. However, this is obviously an issue if somebody gets a hold of your session ID, because now they can pretend to be you without having any authentication, without having your username, without having your password. These are usually kept in as cookies. And generally, you want to be able to have these session IDs encrypted so that if somebody was on the network and they were capturing packets. They were sniffing the air and being able to see this. Of course, you would want to be able to hide this. So whenever you're sending session ID information, it's usually being sent over an encrypted channel. That way nobody can really know. And one thing you'll notice that after a certain amount of time, your session ID becomes invalid anyway. The server only sets a particular time frame. You can log in and the login's only going to work for an hour or for 4 hours or a day. But after that time frame is up, you have to re-authenticate. It's a way to help keep those sessions fresh and make sure that if somebody does get a hold of a session ID, they would not be able to use your account for any extended period of time. One common way to do this, if you have access to in the clear information, one way to do this is just what they call sidejacking. You're effectively listening in the air, grabbing the session ID, and now you're going to use exactly the same session ID to that server. That's how simple this really does work. Something very easy to do. It used to be that whenever you were on Facebook, whenever you were on Twitter, none of that communication was sent over an encrypted channel. Now you'll notice all of it's being sent over encrypted channels. And that's one of the reasons why, so that you can see that nobody can get access to your session ID by taking and grabbing this information out of the packets that are going back and forth. So if you're one of the folks that answered on this one, session hijacking, 50% of you did say session hijacking. You got that one absolutely correct. Now, why would it not be one of the others? Would it not be brute force? Well, it wouldn't be. Brute force is a good way to determine what someone's password might be, but there we're trying to find out what you would use to authenticate so that you could use it again. In this case, I'm asking you how you can provide access without having to authenticate at all. And brute force would not be the way to do that. Denial of service is a way to bring a service down. You're not really gaining access to a service, and you certainly have no authentication that's associated with that. That's not one of the cases. Social engineering, this is one where you're using a human being to try to get information out of another human being. And usually the way that you do this is you ask the other human being to give you their authentication mechanisms. So all of these social engineering, you have to be able to authenticate. Social engineering is just a way to get information, and that information may include a username and password. So of course, it doesn't provide you access to a service without authentication, at least not in the traditional sense. VLAN hopping is one where I'm on one VLAN, and now I can sneak around and get onto another VLAN where normally I should not be. Now, hopefully your switch administrator has set up the proper security, so something like that cannot happen. But here, once you get on the other VLAN, you still have to be able to authenticate to a service. So that doesn't get you around any authentication processes, generally speaking. Nobody's setting up their authentication that if you're on a VLAN, you magically get access to the service. There's still a username and password regardless of where you're coming from. So VLAN hopping would not be the correct answer either. In this case, the only clear answer, session hijacking. That's one where whenever you start stepping through these problems and trying to figure out the details, you have to really look at every single one of these, find out which one applies to this specific question, and fill in the blank. There are other attack types that can provide you with access to a service without authenticating. One that comes to mind immediately is man in the middle. If I'm sitting in the middle of a conversation, then I have just as many rights to be able to modify or change that information going through as I would like. Man in the middle can certainly give me access to a service without authenticating. And there's some other methods too to provide access to a service like without authenticating, a buffer overflow, a database injection. All of these are ways to gain access to a service without having to go through the formal username and password authentication prompt, but they weren't on this list. The only one on this list that really does provide you with access to a service without authenticating, session hijacking. I will get somebody that will tell me that social engineering can do it, and I would sort of agree with parts of that. Let's take, for example, let's assume that gaining access to a building is gaining access to the service, and I can pretend that I'm the phone guy and I'm walking in behind somebody without a badge and they let me in because I've got the outfit on. That's social engineering, and now I've gained access to the service. I guess we could stretch that one. But with all questions you get on your exam, the questions are going to have you look for the best possible answer, even if it doesn't say so in the question. You need to find the one that really applies the best. In this case, far and above anything else, session hijacking, absolutely the right answer here. But you're welcome to send me an email anyway. We can always fight about it. I'm fine with that. Some of you in the chat room are saying, well, when you do this session hijacking, is it going to kick the other person off? Not usually, not necessarily. Sometimes there are methods, especially over VPNs, where if someone else logs in with your authentication mechanism, it will log out the other session. But the application is really the one that handles that piece, and most applications don't. And that's why you can go to multiple computers that you have. You can go to your tablet, and your phone, and your computer. It can all be logged in simultaneously. Well, use the same session ID if you wanted to from all of those, and it would work fine. So it's a very common thing to run into. I think we have some time for one more question. So I want to get through one more before we're done today. I think this is a pretty easy one, but I think we can certainly work through what it happens to be. This one at least is a couple of steps. So you're going to have to figure this one out, because I'm asking you which of these would be the best use of a multimeter. This is one where whenever you start working with all of these different tools, a multimeter is something that's incredibly useful. So which of these would be the best use of a multimeter? Would it be to locate the ends of a cable run? Would it be to measure power supply output voltages? Would it be to determine the light loss of a fiber run? Would it be identify crossed wires in an Ethernet patch panel? Or would it be to connect a wire to a punch-down block? Now, there are at least 3 of these answers that are clearly can be used with a multimeter. But only one of these is really the one that would be the best use of the multimeter. And this is one where you start stepping through these pieces. That's something you should absolutely know. And make sure you go through these pieces and see if you happen to know what these are. If you think you do know, go to Socrative.com to the room name Professor Messer, and you'll be able to answer this one. I think 100% of you should be getting this one. I don't think anybody should be missing this one. But all of these, at least 3 of these, I could use with a multimeter. That gives you a little bit of a hint. So maybe you can get rid of 2 off your list and work through these 3s. Is this for networking? This is absolutely for networking. A multimeter is one of the most useful things you will use with technologies, with networks, with computers, with security. Multimeters are incredibly useful tools. I have one near me always for whatever I'm doing because they are so useful to use at home. They're so useful to use in my studio. They're useful when I go somewhere else, when I go to a hotel, when I go to my parents' house, when I go to someone else's house. This is one where you do need to know. And the use of a multimeter, whatever it happens to be here, we're looking for the answer that is the best use of a multimeter. Not the best use of a multimeter when it's at your home or at your business or in your network or working on a computer or at your friend's house. I'm looking for the answer that would be the best use of a multimeter because it applies across the board with all of these. I think most of you did pretty well with this one. In fact, I don't think really anyone was fooled here with what the best use of a multimeter might be. 92% of you said, well, really the best use would be to measure the power supply output voltages. You'd be absolutely right. If you're running into a problem, you're implementing a new switch, a new router, especially these very large devices that are going into a data center, before you plug in that $500,000 piece of equipment or these millions of dollars worth of equipment into a data center that you've never been in before, you might want to check the power before you do that. And one way to do that is to absolutely measure the power supply output voltages and being able to do that. Pretty important. Would it locate the ends of a cable run? It could if your multimeter was long enough. But notice here I said a cable run, which implies that this is a long connection, maybe over a floor. But it's very common to use a multimeter. The continuity can tell you where the ends of 2 pieces of copper are. So if you have a cable that's right in front of you and you've got both ends that you can access with the same multimeter, that's a very good thing to use to locate where the different pins might be. In fact, identifying cross wires in an Ethernet patch panel can be very easily done with a multimeter. A lot of people will have these cable testers where you just plug in the cable and it tells you. But that's effectively performing that same continuity function that you would perform manually with a multimeter. So it becomes pretty handy to have that capability there as well. Multimeters are used for many different things. You should have a multimeter. They're $10 for an inexpensive multimeter. You plug it right into your wall outlet and be able to know, is there power? What type of voltages are in that wall outlet? What would I expect to see? If you've got a bunch of batteries sitting around, you're wondering if those batteries are good. If you've got a battery you're pulling out of a computer or another device, you're wondering, is this battery dead? How would you really know unless you had a multimeter to test the DC voltages? And we already talked about continuity and being able to find the two ends of a piece of copper. It makes it very easy to see if a fuse is blown, if a copper connection is really making it from one side to the other. Very, very simple to have that there. And that's why the folks that did answer measure power supply output voltage absolutely got that one absolutely right. Well done with those pieces and being able to know how to use that multimeter. Again, a very important consideration for your Network Plus certification exam. If you're wondering where I'm getting all this stuff from, all these different things, they come directly from the exam objectives. Somebody was asking me in the chat room yesterday, hey, is this on the exam? I said, you should download and look through the exam objectives. And they said, you just tell me if it's in there. The problem is I'll tell you and then go, all right, how about this thing? Is this thing on the exam? If you're asking me if something is on the exam, then I know you don't have the exam objectives because they tell you everything that's on the exam. If you have not downloaded the CompTIA exam objectives, stop what you're doing with your studies and download them immediately and read them. A very easy way to get to the CompTIA exam objectives is go to professormesser.com/objectives or go to a Google machine and type in CompTIA exam objectives. It tells you everything you need to know. If you know everything that's in this list of objectives, you're going to pass your exam without any problem whatsoever. That's how detailed they are. You want to know what ports you should memorize? It's in the exam objectives. You want to know what you should know at the command line, what command lines are most important? They're in the exam objectives. You need to know all the different topologies that are important. They're in the exam objectives. Do I need what particular interfaces on the fiber side do I need to know? They're in the exam objectives. Just go get the exam objectives. Everything is in there. You should have them already. If you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're going to walk into your exam, and unfortunately, people tell me all the time, oh, I didn't pass my exam. They asked me questions. I have no idea what they were asking me. I have no idea where these topics came from. And so, of course, I ask, like a good lawyer, which I'm not, I ask the question, because I know what the answer is, so do you have a copy of the exam objectives? And they go, nope, I don't know what you're talking about. And they don't even understand that there was a huge list that told you everything you would need to know for the exam. And then they download it and they grab it and they go, this is great. And then they walk in, they pass their exam. So avoid the first part. Just go straight to the exam objectives. Use it as a checklist. Check off everything and you'll be able to walk into your exam and know that you're going to see everything there. As I mentioned, I do these study groups once a month for Network Plus. So we have another one scheduled for July, of course. It's the summer school version on July the 13th of 2016. Now, if you're watching this on a replay and we're well past July 13th, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and see when the next Network Plus study group might be. There are other live events as well. If you want to attend my A Plus study group, next week is my Security Plus study group. You're wondering, when are these study groups? Unfortunately, I watched some people pop into the chat room as we were in the middle of this one saying, hey, when does this study group start again? I don't know. Well, it's out at the calendar. Everything is on the calendar. I try to even put on that page, professormesser.com/calendar. Hopefully it will figure out where you are and it will show you your time versus what the actual time is for the study group. That might help you as well to have that there. Well, we've come to the end of an hour. Can you believe that? Another hour of a study group. Do you ever want to know what's going on? Whenever I put stuff on Instagram, my daily Network Plus pop quiz. If you're not signed up for my daily Network Plus pop quiz, you should do that immediately by going to the Professor Messer website. The right sidebar is the link to sign up for the mailing list. But you can, of course, see these every day on Twitter. You can see them on Facebook. You can't even see it on the screen because my big head's in the way. And being able to do that. Here we go. Let's get rid of my head for a second. ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. If you want to know more about, and it's ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram/Google+/vouchers. I try to make as many quick links there as possible. Don't forget about the Network Plus course notes at ProfessorMesser.com/NPCN. I've also got, well, that's not the right link at all. There we go. Put my head back in there. My thanks again to GTS Learning. Get your free hour of live labs at ProfessorMesser.com/netlabs. And by following that link, you also get the discounted price as well. Don't forget about that. And of course, we got study groups all the time. And you can find out all the live events by going to the study groups at professormesser.com/calendar. Wow. Well, if you're here and you have some time, I'm sticking around. We're going to open up the phone lines in the after show. The formal study group and the questions are over, alas. But we'll do another one next month, and hopefully we'll see you there as well. Until then, have a great month, and we'll see you in the next study group, everyone. How do I present my shows? How do I do this? Well, I'll take you through. While I am getting the phone lines up and running, I will explain to you how this entire mess works. Actually, I can't do that because that requires me doing multiple things simultaneously, which I am incapable of doing. So let me start my show up and get the phone lines going, and then I'll show you how all this whole nonsense works. Let's find, what am I looking for? I'm looking for my Skype, because you call into the show. I actually call into the show as well. This call-in process that I'm using is it's all cloud-based. It's in the cloud. It's a happy little cloud. I wonder if I have enough money on Skype for this. Let's find out, shall we? Let's call in and make that happen. Boop, 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 boop. I think I got rid of the calling noises on here.
Thank you for calling.
You're welcome for me calling. What do I type in? I type this. And there's a pound sign. There we go.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
We'll see. It's not a PIN number. We do this every month. And then I type this in. I got to make sure you're not seeing it, because that would really be something. Welcome. So now you can call in if you'd like. The phone lines are up. You don't have to. I'm also looking at the chat room at professormesser.com/live. But if you'd like to call in, you can call in toll free and free over Skype at +1 855 785 RJ45. That's 855 785 7545. And you do get to hear the questions on the phone. I'll just turn it on, and you do talk to me. It's a whole communication thing. It's not just me looking at the chat. It's going through the entire process. So that's there. So if nobody calls, it's fine too. But it's sitting there. It's ready if you want to do that, or ask questions in the chat room. So the question was, how do I present this show? How does this work anyway? Really good question. Really, it only involves all of these things. Ultimately, what you're seeing it on is YouTube Live. So YouTube has a live streaming function, and there is a setup process I use. That's what one of the things this laptop does over here is it becomes my YouTube console. So I'm able to set up and use my YouTube view of the world from here. This is where I start my streaming process The actual video and audio that is getting to you is being sent to you through this streaming mechanism that it's kind of hard for you to see here, but this is a TriCaster. It's a piece of hardware. It's really a Windows machine that has some really awesome video capture cards in it. And it has this great colorful console that you can see in front of me that allows me to switch through multiple cameras. Because I use multiple cameras for this. So it's a video switcher / streaming / recording / special effects / overlay mechanism. It's amazing. But it allows me to do things like flip from camera to camera, like you can see me doing here, all the different cameras that I'm running. And I'm able to overlay things on the screen as well, like that. All by simply clicking a few things and having this console and presetting it up. And I'm sort of doing multiple things at a time. I'm running the questions. I'm running the video audio system. But it effectively has one button on it. You can't see it, but there's a couple of red buttons here at the top. One of them is a stream button. I configure the TriCaster with the appropriate stream IDs for this particular session that we're doing today. I click the stream button. It streams out to YouTube. I tell the laptop to start the stream, and here we are. It's remarkable that it even works at all, isn't it? It's really a lot of other moving parts here. Now, obviously, there's multiple cameras in here. There's a camera behind me. There's a camera in front of me. You can't even see the one behind me because it's kind of off in an angle. There's the one in front of me. I have the screen that is in front of me. I have physically connected it to the video system as well. So it's not a screen copy. It really is the screen. I'm sending an actual video signal into the TriCaster from that. So you have the best possible, clearest view that you can see and being there. It does look dark from the back. If you look at this, the room looks very dark, and it is very dark. There are two very large lights here. There are two lights on the side. So I've got lights that are actually lighting the back that you don't see. I really should just take a picture of this just so you could see what it's like from your side. Maybe I'll do that before we're done, and just take a shot. So then I'll stick it on the Instagram so you can see it. But there's lighting here, and I run all the lighting from my console. Let me real quick jump over here. I will show you my console. In fact, I'll just bring it up here. So on my screen, let me get it started here so we can see all of these. Here we go. So I have an APC power distribution unit. It's effectively just a power switch. It's a I forget which model it is. Let's log in and see. I'm gonna log in. Does it even tell me? Switch rack PDU. It looks just like a power strip. There's 8 outlets on it. Here's all 8 of these outlets that are here. And on this power strip, it's connected to my Ethernet network. It has an IP address. So it's 10.1.10.238. And all of the different outlets are listed here. And all of my lights are on here. So I can turn on and off any lights. I have one on my back, left and right back. If I want to turn these off, I can simply tell it to turn it off. And they'll say, are you sure you want to turn those off? I'll say, yeah, just get rid of the light that's on the background. So yeah, it is dark. When the lights are off, it gets pretty dark in here. Big difference. I have these other lights that are in front of me. If I turn those off, click, tell it to go off immediately. So you're right. Without having any of those lights on, it's a very different experience in here. And this is what it normally is when you're not here. Now, normally I have there's these drapes that I have across the walls and across the windows, so it's dark in here now. But normally those are open, so it helps muffle the sound, and of course it helps with the lighting. If I turn back on the back lights, right and left back, so here's what it is with just the back lights on. So you can see how important it is to have the lights in the front. Lighting is such a thing. There's a whole science behind lighting. I just this past weekend watched the Tonys, and they didn't specifically show the Tony Awards around lighting. There's a Tony Award for lighting, and I get it. It is a science unto itself. It's an art unto itself, and I'm just happy that I'm able to turn some things on and that you're able to see where I am. Otherwise, it would be pretty bad. And they're pretty bright lights. To have this here, I've got them turned down a lot, so you really don't see a lot of the lighting. They can go up much brighter than they are here, but they're really right in front of me, right at the edge of my desk. Can you even see them in the shot? You really can't. You can kind of see the bottom of them. In fact, let me move it up. So let's do this. Let's do this, shall we? Let's have some fun. So, there we go. Hi, everybody. Hi. How you doing? So if we were to move this up, so there you go. That's a little bit better shot. You can kind of see of what's going on there. And then to the left and right, there's the backlight. I know you can't hear me. So there's light right there. There's a lot of lights. There's a lot going on there. That'll work for now. Okay. So there you go. Let me put my headset in so I can hear me. So you can see there's a lot up there and around there that you normally don't see. I just can't fit that many cameras in here. Now you can kind of see the bottom of the monitor screen up there a little better. And that's why it's sort of a combination of different things. I can do exactly this same thing with a webcam, and that's it. All I need is a webcam and a USB mic, and we could do exactly the same thing. This is just something that sort of has been built over time, and it's for convenience and it's for speed, and I don't have to set up a lot of things. I can walk in, turn on the TriCaster, and I'm broadcasting. I don't have to set up my laptop again. Because I used to do everything with software on my laptop. I used to use a product called Wirecast. And the Wirecast is great because I can do everything in software. I can have multiple cameras. A lot of the things you see happen here, I can do exactly the same thing with Wirecast. It's very powerful and very useful. But I would set this up, and then I'd do something else throughout the week, or I'd upgrade my operating system. I'd upgrade a driver. I add a new piece of hardware, and Wirecast wouldn't like it. And then I wouldn't be able to broadcast, and that's not any good. Plus, I want to have something that I can present to you very quickly. I need to record these videos, get them into a format I can edit, and then get them out to you. And the software doesn't necessarily capture as well as something that's hardware-based, or at least offloaded to be able to do that. So that's why I have these extra devices. That's why you can sort of see my silencer still here. I've got dedicated recording devices that are recording the audio and video from two separate videos from both the preview and the program simultaneously. That way, if there's any problems with this, I can edit and upload to YouTube. The question in the chat room, do I edit this video after uploading to YouTube? Generally, no. Now, if I've done something during the live stream and I've shown a screen I didn't mean to, and that screen has information that I didn't want you to see. That doesn't happen very often, but for whatever reason, if something needs to be edited out of that, I will edit the locally captured video and re-upload it to YouTube. But I try not to, because that's just more work. It takes a long time to edit and render 2 hours worth of content. So I try not to. Just leave it the way it is, and we're fine. So that's one of the things I think that helps a lot, is I can do this live. It's streaming out to you. I don't have to change a lot of things. And the moment I end this stream, it's immediately available on YouTube. So even if you miss the beginning or you miss the after part, there's a DVR you can rewind right now immediately. Or once I click the button, it takes a number of minutes to format it on the YouTube side and make it available. But minutes after the stream is over, it's immediately available to you, which I love. There's no delay. I don't have to edit anything. It's just perfect, and being able to work through there and those pieces. So I know that we got, let's go to the phones. Well, no, I had a phone call and they dropped off. Sorry about that. It was me talking too much. But if you would like to call in, there's the number, +1 855 RJ45 with those pieces. So in the chat room, a number of you, I should list out all of the hardware and software we do for this, and I am planning to do that. I have a streaming project I'm working on right now. I want to do a live nature-related stream, a 24/7 nature-related stream. We're going to start with something like a bird feeder. So I live in a wooded area. There's a lot of animals. There's a lot of birds, a lot of different kinds of birds. So I'm going to set up a 24/7, and I'm sort of doing this project with my daughter, so she can really understand what does it take to get hosting, to set up the website, to set up the stream. We're going to run the cable. I'm going to document the process and everything we're doing for that. So I'm using a power over Ethernet camera. The camera can even do, I think the camera can do 4K. It can do at least 4 megapixels anyway. It's not 4K, but it can do at least 4 megapixels. We're not going to run it at that resolution, but it can capture at very high frame rates. We're going to stick it outside, weatherproof it, have a place where it's perfect for a camera, and see if we can stream 24/7 and see what happens. There's so many things to do with that, just more for fun than anything. So we're going to start that this week. I have all the equipment in. I've done some testing. We have to go outside and actually put the cable in the ground, which is, I just bought an Instagram, the box of, nobody really asked me, what in the world are you doing with a box of external Ethernet cable that's designed to go directly into the ground? I don't have to put it into any type of conduit. It can go right in the ground. So that will be very easy, and I'll bring it right into the studio. That's why I have a new Cisco switch arriving today for power over Ethernet. So it will have a dedicated switch, and we'll go through those pieces and being able to work through those. It's very useful to have that there. And everything will just use the same connection to the internet. So I will have that video and the steps for that as the project proceeds. Well, let's go to the phone lines. We've got the 937 area code. Are you there, caller? Hi, what's your name?
This is Jen.
Hey, Jen. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
I have never, ever even heard of subnetting. I've fixed computers for, 15 years, but I've never touched networking.
Good for you.
So I've been focusing on the subnetting for the scenarios.
Yes.
And for the life of me, I cannot figure out subnet range. I can figure out the rest of it, just not the subnet range.
It is. It's kind of a mental block part of the entire Network Plus certification for many people. And it's one of these things where it's sort of a difficult concept in general to figure out, because it seems like a lot of math. It's really not that hard. It's really addition and subtraction, but it's a lot of numbers. There's binary, and you got to convert it back to decimal. And then there's the entire concept overall. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I putting down a bunch of ones and zeros and going through this process? So I get that. I get that it's not intuitive. And a lot of people even describe subnetting as, I was doing it, and then all of a sudden it clicked for me. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people...
That's how it was last week. I couldn't get anything, and now I'm to the point I'm stuck at the range.
Right. It's like an incremental light goes on through the entire process.
Yeah, huh?
The thing that I usually will do, there's a number of great websites that can step you through these pieces. Once you go through the videos, you kind of understand the format of what's really going on, and you can, what I call, manually calculate out the subnet, which in my videos, you've seen me take the subnet, determine what the extra subnet bits are, and then I do these binary calculations to come up with the final numbers in those pieces. And then we go through the entire process, and then we finally have at the end what really are 3 or 4 things each question is going to ask for. Well, these questions, for the other people that are listening in, these subnetting questions really want to know, and the fundamentals are really what you need to know. What is the network address for the subnet? What is the broadcast address for the subnet? And then what are the available host IDs, the host numbers for the different devices in that subnet? And so those are really the 3 things you have to know. But of course, the questions aren't that straightforward. They're asking you some very different questions, but they all really come back to those 3 things. You have to be able to calculate the subnet address, the broadcast address, and then what the different host IDs are. If you can do that, you are 99% there to doing what you need to do. What I have done in the past, and I'll give you 2 things. I'll give you 2 comments about this. One is, on the Network Plus exam, if you look at the exam objectives, the subnetting section is a very small piece of one group of objectives that is in a much larger section of objectives, that is in a much larger domain of objectives, that is in a much larger group of domains. So the number of possible subnetting questions that you might get on the Network Plus certification, you might get a subnetting question. You might not get a subnetting question. That's how of a small number it is versus all the other content on the exam. You might get 2 subnetting questions, though. I mean, it just depends on what the actual pick of the draw happens to be. But it's not a huge number of questions. So when people have come to me in the past and they've said, I just can't deal with this. I'm on a tight time frame. I got to take this thing in 48 hours. And I'm just not getting subnetting. And what I'll tell somebody in that situation is, just forget it. Go learn everything else you could possibly learn during that period. Instead of spending 10 hours trying to learn how to subnet, why don't you spend 10 hours on anything else?
A lot longer than that.
Exactly. Now, if you got time, then you probably should go through the process of figuring out subnetting. And maybe it takes a lot of different techniques, because the technique I give you in my video is a very formalized binary manual subnetting process. But in practical terms, we usually will subnet much faster in our head using different ways. And if you go out to the YouTube, there are so many people with subnetting videos. Find one that works for you, because there's a lot of what I call shortcuts or different ways to do subnetting that might click better for you. And I get that. Once you get that part,
yeah, that's what I started doing. Is
good.
Like, I finally found a video, and that's how I got where I got.
Perfect. So do that. Find multiples, because there are 2 or 3 different techniques out there for doing subnetting. The other thing I will mention is there are a lot of other websites, and I really need to do one of these myself. I think this would be a great thing to have on my website. So now that you've prompted me, I'll probably do this. But there's a lot of subnetting practice questions websites out there that will dynamically create a question for you and then tell you if you get the answer right or not. So there aren't just a lot of things that are set up that once you go through the 50 questions, you're done. these questions are just created automatically. So, and there's tons of them out there. It looks like most of them are really based around learning based on a set of advertisements around there. So that's how they're able to run this. But here's one. How many subnets and hosts per subnet can you get from the network? 172.21.0.0/20. So there's a pretty good question. And then you can calculate it, go through the process you have in your mind, and then there's a reveal answer button that will say, oh, that's 16 subnets and 4,094 hosts. So you've got to do the math, get to where you're going, and then once you get there, you can go to the next question. There's a ton of sites like this, though. Just go to Google and look for subnetting practice, and it will absolutely give you a lot of different websites. Some of them are very good subnetting practice questions. Some of them are not so great subnetting practice questions, quite honestly. So find one that works for you.
Much better than the 85-page workbook that I'm doing.
Holy cow, just for subnetting. Yeah, don't do that to yourself. Nobody, I don't have enough, there's not enough alcohol in my house to deal with that. So don't do that. Go find the process that works for you. Whenever, I wish I had the paper here, but the Network Plus certification is not huge on subnetting. There's things you need to know, but it's not a major part of the exam. But if you continue on to the next obvious Cisco exam, for example, which is the CCENT, it's their very first in the line of different certifications exams you will do. It has an extensive requirement for understanding subnetting. And I often will tell people, if you want to pass that exam, you need to be able to answer that question I gave, which is tell me what the subnet address, the broadcast address, and all of the host IDs. You need to be able to calculate that for a subnet in about 10 seconds or less to be able to pass that exam, because there's so much subnetting on there. And the subnetting on the Cisco exams is really something that helps you get to the next process of what you're working on, like configuring OSPF or troubleshooting a network problem. You need to be able to calculate the subnets very, 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 very fast. And you will get there. What I generally do on those exams.
So that's why I got to do it.
Oh, see, there you go. Perfect example. So it's one of these, though, that you will get to a point where you do this. When I took my Cisco certification exams, I never trust myself to get the calculations right. I lose all cognitive abilities when I walk into the exam room. There's too much adrenaline going. You're in this environment where now you have to know everything. The pressure is on. It takes me a long time to settle in once I get into the room. But one thing that I do is I take a very fine tip erasable marker, because if you go into these certification exams these days, they don't give you a sheet of paper anymore. They give you a plastic sheet, and they give you what I think must be a marker designed for creating posters or something. The tip on the marker is huge. How can I use this for an exam? So I go out and I buy a fine tip erasable marker, and I just check in with them at the front desk and say, hey, I brought my own marker. Here, you can try it out yourself. Is this okay for me to use? And they go, yeah, of course it is. And then when I get in there, I have this sheet of paper and I create an IP subnetting chart from it. So all of these things in my mind, and I have a set of things that I create in the chart. I really need to find the chart that I use. I even go to the nth degree and I write down all of the different host, the different subnetting barriers between all the different subnets. For a /24 is easy. I know what the number ranges are for a /24. I used to work with a /26 network, so a /26 network I got. But when you get into a /240 or a 248, and you got to figure out, where does the subnet start and where does it stop? Does it start on the 4 or the 2 or the 8? I can't remember. So I literally create a chart that lists out all of the different subnet starting and stopping points on my page, because when I get a question and it asks me, what is this subnet for /29, and I've got to go, /29, I got it right here. That's the blah, blah, blah. Here's the list of possible subnets. I know where it starts, I know where it stops. Answer. So in 5 seconds, I've got everything I need to know about that subnet because it's in my chart. It's kind of cheating, but I'll tell you, as someone who has worked in the industry for many years in both networking and network security roles, the professionals that do this day to day get this wrong all the time. We screw up subnetting constantly, not because we want to, but because it's so easy to do it. So don't kill yourself. Like, this seems like it's hard. Well, it seems that way because it kind of is. It's a complex set of moving things that all have to go into exactly the right order for it to work properly. And if you screw up any one of those, you screw up the whole subnet. So I will constantly, when I'm implementing a new firewall, I'm plugging it in, I ask the person, okay, give me an IP address on your network with a subnet mask and a default gateway. And they give me the information, and I look at it, I go, wait a second, on this /19 network, you gave me an IP address and you gave me a default gateway that are not on the same subnet. And they go, yeah, I screwed that up. Like, yeah, I would have screwed that up too. What is it? And, we end up going to a subnetting calculator and confirming what we think it should be. This happens all the time. So don't kill yourself over subnetting. There are a lot of subnetting charts that people have created online that you can memorize, because it's all just calculations of powers of 2, right? So it's easy to walk into the room with the basic numbers and then extrapolating everything out on your charts for that. So that's my recommendations for you, is to try some other techniques, try some of these subnetting testing and training sites to get you more familiar with these questions, and build your own chart and effectively use the same chart when you go into the exam. And I think you're going to be just fine.
Okay, thank you.
Good luck, Jen. There is subnetting. Just don't kill yourself with subnetting. It's one of these where when you start working through the subnetting piece of it, it does become a real pain to try to figure it out. But on that Cisco exam, it's got to be fast. You got to go quick and being able to do that. And we do get it wrong all the time. All the time. So don't worry about it. So in the chat room asking, so when they finally get rid of IPv4, will we still need to worry about subnetting with IPv6? So two things. One, there is first, we're not getting rid of IPv4 ever. So they tell you never say never. I think one thing we can all agree with is that we will never get rid of IPv4. How is that even possible? There's so many devices, embedded devices, that are using IPv4. We will never get rid of it. So it will still be here to some degree. But let's say that it's now sort of in the background and we're using IPv6. Do we need to worry about subnetting with IPv6? There is the same concept of hosts and networks in IPv6. It's exactly the same as IPv4 to that degree. There is a CIDR block notation that you use with IPv6 the same way you use it with IPv4. The difference is, however, is that you are generally given a /64 network to work with. And if you need another network, you don't subnet what you already have, you just get another one. Because there are so many IPv6 addresses that you never need to do any subnetting past a /64. Now, the ISP you're using probably has a /56 or a /58 block, and they'll carve off 64s, and they'll give you as many as you want. How many /64s would you like? Yeah, they will give you as many as you need. You need 10,000? You need 10,000 network addresses? Here you go, 10,000. And of course, you got 64 bits for hosts for each one of those. So that's enormous. It's more than you have with all of IPv4 combined. So that's why you never have to worry about learning the subnetting, the multiple subnetting of a subnet with IPv6, because you don't have to. Could you? You absolutely could. Enjoy putting yourself through that grief and that pain, but you don't have to, because it's IPv6, and we could just start cranking these things out like a copier. Oh, you need more? We'll just print out some more. We'll print money. We'll print IP addresses for you, as many as you need, and we'll just keep printing it off. Why would you subnet it even any farther? Obviously, an IPv6 address is 128 bits, so the first half, literally first half, is your network address. The last half are the number of hosts on the network. What could be easier than that? Actually makes IPv6 really, really easy from that perspective, because you never have to worry about subnetting. Now, if you're an ISP and you have a larger block and you're handing out addresses to other people, you probably will be doing some subnetting, but that's not really hard either to be able to work through that. The subnetting practice, Johnny in the chat room likes subnettingpractice.com. The one I showed on my screen was subnettingquestions.com. I don't know that I like that one very much. It's not pretty. Subnetting practice Oh, it actually makes you put the answer in, and then you hit the submit button. So that one makes you actually type things in. I don't know that I like that either. And being able to work through those. Everybody is different subnetting. They like the subnetting process that's in the Cisco books. Who writes the Cisco books? How can I not remember this off my top of my head? Cisco certification. Only follow him and read every day the tweets he sends out. Wendell Odom. So Wendell Odom's process in his Cisco CCNT or his CCNA books are really good as well. Chat room, Johnny likes Todd Lanley's subnetting process. So find the one that works for you and work through those pieces. Makes it very easy to do that. I don't know what the publisher is for those. Just go out on the Amazon and have a look. I get everything through ebooks anyway. So it's one of those that whenever you're working through them, you run into them. I think the Wendell Odom one was the one that worked for me. That clicked for me. And the Wendell Odom one's a fast way to do it. You don't do the binary calculations. What you'll find is once you get past the fundamentals of understanding what you're doing at the binary level, you find the shortcuts that get you to the faster process so you don't have to go through the binary calculations. And his was a very good way to do it. I think most people use the same process to be able to do it because at the end of it, there's only one way to do a subnet. It's not like you could come out with different answers. It's always the same answer for the same question when you're doing subnetting. So find the one that works and go with that piece. That's the one I like to use anyway and work through those pieces. I mentioned in the study group, now I need to find this link. I think I was looking for this link earlier and didn't find it. Now I'm going to go through my browser history. I'm surely not going to show you this on the screen. Let's find, there was an article I read, I think it was last month. It was a researcher that did a study of his bank's online banking app. And I don't believe this was in the US. I think he was in Sweden. It was an Indian bank. It was a bank in India. He lives in Sweden. The article title is The Bank Job. It's at boris.in. So if you go to boris.in, Boris Info, and it's an article he wrote where he's a security researcher that took the app that he was using to communicate to his bank. And many of his family members had accounts at this bank. And he found that the app was not working very well, wasn't using a lot of the things you would hope specific to things like session IDs, because we talked about session IDs on the first part in the first hour. It was doing things like never expiring a session ID. It's obviously a no-no. Another thing it did was that if you use the API, the application programming interface behind the scenes, you didn't use the app itself, but you wrote your own front end, effectively built your own app, it would communicate to the bank and perform transactions without any authentication. So he was able to transfer money between his account and he tested it with one family member's account just to see if money would transfer, and it did. So effectively, he had access to every account at the bank and could transfer money between all of them without any authentication. It's an intriguing article. Even if you don't know everything he's talking about, he writes it in a way you can kind of follow along. That's at Boris, boris.in. It's called The Bank Job, and it was intriguing to read. So it really took you through the steps. A little scary, too. If you ever like to be scared about technology, that's a great place to go and be able to do that. I know that this is the Network Plus study group, but all topics, of course, apply in the after show. And that's just one we ran into and we talked a lot about on there. So the question, what is the best book for Network Plus? I guess there's no best book for Network Plus. But of course, the one that I used to get through, this was not the same bank that had the huge break-in. At least I don't believe it was. And it was not through this mechanism. They fixed the problem, by the way. They had to, spoiler alert, he told the bank about it and they fixed the problem. So the best book, GTS Learning, is the book that I use to create all of my videos. And I use their books because they're so straightforward. They don't give you any fluff. They stick to the exam objectives and they tell you exactly what you need to know without going into a lot of different details, which is what I want. I don't want a set of materials that's telling me about the history of binary. I don't care about that. I'm trying to pass an exam. So the GTS Learning, if you go to ProfessorMesser.com, if you go to the Network Plus videos, I have a link there to their ebook, and I'll put the list of it there so you can see it. But their ebook is the one that I usually will recommend because it is straightforward. It is what I pulled from to make my videos, and then what they did, sort of a chicken and egg thing. Now that I created the videos, they updated the book with QR codes that link to the videos. So you read part of the book, and then when you finish reading that section of the book is a link that takes you to my video that explains that section as well. So you can get it from both of us at the same time, perhaps in different ways. I don't do a word for word of their book. I just take ideas and concepts of their book and create videos from those things. So that's the one I generally recommend because this is the ebooks are important. There's a lot of ebooks out there. If you're just trying to figure it out, go out to Amazon. And usually you can look into a book and find one that works for you. But the GTS Learning book tends to be a good one to work through. I like their book a lot, and being able to have that different ways to learn the same thing is something I'm always recommending to people. Don't just use a video. Don't just use a book. Don't just do Q&A. Do all of it. And if you have their book, you have all of it. So you really can't beat that. You'll find it if you go to freenetworkplus.com. That's a quick link that takes you to the Network Plus videos on my site, the latest Network Plus videos, freenetworkplus.com. And at the top of the page is a link to the GTS Learning book. Good way to do it there. And I think that most people do want to focus on the objectives. I don't know why you would. I mean, it's good to know more. Of course, you would want to be great to learn as much as you can about every concept and aspect of networking, certainly. But most of us are here to get exactly what we need to know for the exam. There are many books out there that go deep, deep, deep into the details of networking. So you can, of course, go out and work through those pieces too. I don't necessarily recommend the all-in-one books. I think they're just too much for the exam. Some people like having too much, so it's up to you. That's why I say there's no best book that I can tell you. Everybody has a different idea what the best is. It just depends on what you want. It is extensive. Those all-in-one books are huge in being able to work through those and have there. There is Network Plus wise. I think that's all I had in my list of things, though, from a Network Plus perspective. And of course, in the after show, we sort of do a lot of different things. I was telling you about the project I'm working on. I got the cable that came in is one that I can bury directly into the ground. So it's waterproof. I've got the section it needs to go to. I got to get my boys out here. I'm going to create a trench, a little hole to stick it in, and we'll fill it up. And hopefully in the next week, I'll have that live stream up and running. I'm not sure what I'm going to use yet. I might use YouTube. I'm going to try that at least initially. Might use a different streaming service. This might be a test that I use a different streaming service for this because I might want to use that different streaming service for our live groups, for our live streams. So that might be a good test in being able to work through those. And then, of course, we'll be able to look at birds. So that's good too. If you're a birder, bird watcher, what's the term? That would be there. I've got a great big flat bird feeder. We're going to put the camera right at it. And I've got the camera is going to go in a birdhouse, or really it's going to go in a bird feeder. So it's going to look like a bird feeder, so you'll never even know it's there. And we'll see how it goes. We're going to overlay it with things like weather and tickers and other stuff like that. It's an interesting process to go through as somebody who does a lot of live streaming inside in a very controlled environment. How do you live stream something that's outside in a way that is also high frame rate and high resolution, and also have a way to go back over time and grab things historically to be able to pull out and create smaller links from? So it's a set of different technical requirements that I've never had to deal with before. I think we've got a pretty interesting system that we've set up to make that happen. So we'll see if that works through those pieces. And and having it there. So between all of these different books, between all of the different subnetting you need to do, hopefully the Network Plus stuff is going to work out for you. Just don't spend all of your time on any single topic, and I think you'll be all right. I'm going to make it a bit cooler in here. Maybe we can make this last a couple more minutes. There is, so before the next week, obviously we're doing the Network Plus this week. This is a long month of Wednesdays. There are 5 Wednesdays, I think, in this month. So it started on the 1st, 2 weeks ago. We did the A+. I took a week off. That was my vacation, at least for the moment. And then we have this month. So next month is the Security Plus study group. And then I think there's a week after that at the end of the month where is my normal time between study groups. And then we can go to July. So hopefully I'll have a lot of this stuff ready to go and up and running. So I'll be sure to post it to the Twitter and the Facebook and all of those things too, just so you can find them and being able to get through those pieces. A lot of different things happening this week with technology too. I've been spending a lot of my time as I've been working on this, watching E3 presentations, watching the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference presentations, which disappointed me because I was wanting hardware and they weren't talking about hardware. But a lot of the stuff I'm looking at is VR. That is the part that is intriguing to me. And obviously, like most technologies, gaming seems to be pushing the edges of what we're doing with these things. And then, of course, it will trickle back into more practical applications. And the VR piece is really intriguing to me on the PlayStation side. We got a Vive here. So I've been working and playing around with that. It's all a gaming system, but it's amazing when you can look around as if you are actually in a place and interact with the world. It's a completely different way to operate and entertain yourself. But I was trying to figure out, how do I do it here? How do I implement, or do I implement VR here? It'd be great if you were sitting where you were and then you could look around at the lights and you could look around at the different things in the room and you could look at my screen. You could just lean over and have a look. Should be interesting to see if that takes off. And I'm looking at those different systems. Obviously, not a lot of people doing that live. There's a lot of post-processing that generally has to take place for that to work properly. But it's intriguing that the technology is coming along and being able to do that. How would I compare the Network Plus with the CCENT? It used to be in the past that the Network Plus exam and the CCENT exam had a lot of overlap. If we were to look at the Venn diagram for those two exams, there was a huge amount of overlap. And I want to even think, if by looking at the exam objectives, I almost think that Cisco tried to duplicate the Network Plus exam in structure as much as possible, probably for competitive or at least ease of transitioning. But now that they've updated the CCENT exam, they updated it 3 years ago and they just updated it again. So it's brand new exam right now. The overlap is there's not much overlap. The CCENT exam is much more hands-on than anything you would find in the Network Plus. And I mean to a detailed degree. You need to be able to grab a Cisco switch off the shelf, plug it in, and completely configure it for a local Ethernet network, OSPF connections, and get everything running. I don't know if OSPF is still in the latest CCNT, but it was in the one just prior to this, which I think is still, you can still take. It's a lot of detailed hands-on, so you have to know what the network architecture should be, how to apply that into the configuration of a switch or a router, and then configure that switch or router. That's a lot. And that's none of that's on the Network Plus, not even close to it on the Network Plus. So they're really two very different exams. There is now a very little bit of overlap because they talk about different technologies. What is this protocol? What is subnetting? But once they get past that, now you have to actually apply it, which is something the Network Plus exam really doesn't do. That's outside the scope of the exam. Network Plus is there to give you the foundation. And then the other exams that you would get through, for instance, Cisco, are how do you apply that knowledge? How do you configure a switch or a router to use those protocols, to use that dynamic routing, to do those pieces? So there's a lot that's on there, and being able to work through those pieces. And the latest exam, the chat room, they're talking about this. On the latest Cisco CCNT exam, they changed a lot with the older one. It's an updated version. They got rid of some older technologies. They left some other things in there. They mixed them around. So it's very different than Network Plus. It's a completely different exam. Don't think that because you got your Network Plus exam, you're ready to hop right in and take the CCNT. You're not even close yet. You've got to spend now a lot of time prepping to get the CCNT information into your brain, into your fingers, because on the exam, you're going to have to configure a switch. You're going to have to configure a router. You're going to have to look at statistics. You're going to have to determine what's wrong. You're going to have to correct it all on that exam screen with you and the keyboard. So it's not the same thing at all as the Network Plus. And that's, if you have taken the CCENT, it's easier to go back and take the Network Plus. But even then, there are things that are covered on the Network Plus that are not covered on the CCENT. Not a lot of it. I think IPsec is a good example of that. That was covered on the Network Plus and not really covered on the CCENT. Things like spanning tree, however, extensively covered on the CCENT and kind of giving you an overview on the Network Plus. So they're not even close to being the same exams. Don't even think that they are. They are completely different animals designed for a completely different purpose, and you should absolutely consider them as a separate thing. Do not consider them to be cousins in any way, shape, or form. How am I going to handle the light for the cams at night, the bird cams at night? Good question. Fortunately, most of what I'm going to be using as the camera is a traditional security cam. So the kinds that you would have for home security. But of course, these days, home security cams, there's these multi-megapixel home security cams you can get these days, and that's what I'm using, is a home security camera that's designed. It's a 4-megapixel camera. I'm probably only going to use 1.2 or 2 megapixels of that. It's going to stream 24/7. It of course has the ability to record or capture information if it sees movement. There's a lot of other capabilities. I'm simply using it as a 24/7 webcam. I could have just as easily stuck a USB cam in there if my USB camera could go 150 feet back to where I'm streaming from. But obviously it can't. I also wanted something that I didn't have to worry about where power was. I do have power out near this bird feeder or where it's going to go, but I didn't want to have to rely on that. I wanted to be able to move the camera wherever I wanted. And so I wanted to do power over Ethernet, which all of these cameras support these days. Most of them do. So I can run a single Ethernet cable, plug it in. It's powering and getting data at the same time. You can't beat that. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And the camera, because it's a security camera, has infrared filters built in. So when it gets dark outside, it recognizes that it's getting dark, turns on the infrared filters, and starts up the infrared lights. So you see it very bright as if it's day. It's a black and white picture, but you see it very, very clearly at night. I don't expect there will be a lot of activity at the bird feeders at night because of the type of birds we have here. And the bird feeder that I'm using is one that will have baffles on it to prevent animals from scurrying up, because some of the other bird feeders that I have in my area, and I've shown this in other study groups, is there's raccoons that will get in there at night and they'll just eat at the food. This one won't have that because I'll have baffles that will prevent anything from going up. No snakes, no other critters. There could be a flying squirrel might get in. Normal squirrels can't get up there. I guess if they jumped onto it from somewhere, they might, which is possible. So you never know. We don't know what's going to happen. What could happen there at the bird feeder? Well, I'll be recording it 24/7. If anything happens, it will be doing. I've really got this camera. It's interesting configuration. It's going to be a dual stream configuration. One of the streams will be sent out to the live stream. The other stream, probably the higher resolution one, will be sent over to a recording system. So I have a Synology device. Synology has their own security camera software, and I think it's free up to 4 cameras or something like that. So I'm going to be recording to a large drive array and just have it constantly saving the information, and it does the processing to determine, was there motion, did something happen, send an alarm, or mark that data, save that video, and then we can go back and see what videos are good, and we can post them to YouTube and put links on the website as well of things that are interesting. So it's, being able to stream, grab that data, grab the video, grab the sound, because I got a camera that has sound on it, grab all of that and put your own overlays on it and broadcast that is one function, and then saving it and going back over time, a completely different thing. So it's interesting how we're able to make that happen. And I'm probably going to run multiple Ethernet runs when I do this, so that once I get it in the ground, if I want to put another camera up at some other time, I've already got the wiring out there to do that and make that happen. Yeah, there are no prerequisites for the A+, the Network Plus, the Security Plus, the Cisco exams, the CCNT and the CCNA. No prerequisites for those at all. They give you recommendations in the exam objectives that you should have this much experience in this role to be able to take this. And there's just no, but you don't have to. You could take the exam with no experience whatsoever. They don't check. There's no prerequisite, no formal prerequisite. There are recommended prerequisites. From the chat room, Hassan asks, any chance I'll do Windows 10? Probably not. I did, for those of you that have seen on my website, I have a Windows 7 course, administering Windows 7 or configuring Windows 7 course. A 7680 is the exam code, the Microsoft exam code. And I did that years ago now. It's a kind of an older course, but people still watch it. Windows 7 still being used extensively in the enterprise. The enterprises did not upgrade to Windows 8. Microsoft would love for them to upgrade to Windows 10, and they're pushing that horribly for everybody in the world. Windows 10 is not part of the CompTIA A+ exam objectives, so I don't have any Windows 10 videos in A+ to even worry about. They're all Windows Vista, Windows 7, and Windows 8 and 8.1. I have no plans to create any additional Microsoft video courses, however, for many reasons, but it just doesn't make sense for me to do it. There are other people that are more than happy to make them. Go knock yourselves out. Just not my gig. Oh, well, good. Use the 7680 videos. Congratulations, used and passed your 7680 there. But I'm just not, I just don't have plans to do any of the Windows 10 stuff, at least not currently. Microsoft has a number of resources that they use internally, or they make publicly available on their website. So there's their Microsoft virtual, what do they call it? The virtual labs or virtual academy or whatever they call it. There's just too much competition for that content. It's a very popular content. It's obviously Microsoft. There's incredibly popular, probably some of the most popular software in the world. But there's a lot of people creating content for it. So not quite the niche I'm going for. I'm trying to find the more specialized and yet still popular things that Microsoft Virtual Academy, thank you, that don't, there's a magic balance there between popularity and competition and longevity and applicability. There's a lot of different things that go in that set of variables that I stir around until I figure out what project I'm doing next. And my own personal knowledge of, well, I've worked in networking a long time, worked in security a long time. Does it make sense to do networking and security videos? Do we do some more Microsoft videos? I've worked in server management forever. Do I do some server videos? Do I do some on project management? For some reason, employers are asking people starting at the help desk to have ITIL certifications, ITIL, ITIL, which are ridiculous. Why would somebody at the help desk need to understand the nuances of the infrastructure library? That's just ridiculous. To understand business process management, that's just dumb. And if you're an employer and you're asking your help desk people to get an ITIL certification to work at the help desk, you're dumb. Don't do that. What are you thinking? They don't need to know. They might need to know that someday, but not now. Now they need to know Microsoft. They need to know networking. They need to know computers. They need to know Active Directory. They need to know what they need for the help desk. Now, when they get to be a manager, sure, send them to a nice ITIL course. It's like saying they need to know Six Sigma to work at the help desk. It makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know who thought of this as a good idea. It's an awful idea. Don't do that. So all of you grab that timestamp, this video. You can just send it in to the recruiter. And so I look forward to your emails. There is, I will not be creating any idle materials now. That is one where for some reason, I don't know what they did, what that organization did to make that such a thing. I think because it applies so well for IT management, there are some very good things in idle, in the methodology behind it. And it's an important set of best practices, business processes, guides that can help you keep your IT group on track. And it's perfect for people who are at manager, director, senior director, VP, executive VP level within IT. There's some great skills that you can garner from that. I find all of those very valuable. Everything that's in IDLE is spot on. The information technology infrastructure library organization did a great job at doing whatever it is they did to market that. But if you're working on the help desk, no, it doesn't apply at all. I'm not sure why you'd put people through that. If you ever look at the training materials, not exciting, not happy, exciting materials to go through. And at the end of it, you've now got a set of skills that at a help desk level or even entry level in an organization, I'm not even sure what that's going to do for you. Now, if you're planning to go into business management, you're planning to go into IT management, those are important skills. You should know them. I just don't know that you need to know them now. So enough of that. Active Directory. I don't know what Microsoft Virtual Academy. The last time I looked, I couldn't look at any of it because it requires that you run Windows browsers, Microsoft's browsers specifically, to be able to access it. And all of my primary workstations are running Mac OS, or I guess OS 10, soon to be Mac OS. I can switch over. I got plenty of virtual machines. I can pop up at any time and load up Windows and do anything I'd like in the Windows operating system. But because they did that in the Virtual Academy and I had no interest in going any further with it, I never got into it to see everything that was in there. I just saw their list. Click here and you can run this thing. Well, great. Let me do that. No, you can't. So the questions about can I do something through Microsoft Virtual Academy? I have no idea. But have a look. They put a lot of stuff out there. I'm sure some of it's really good. I'm guessing. I know that the 7680 course got a lot of really good views. It was very popular. It's just a challenge. It's not as popular as the A+, the Network Plus, or Security Plus, and therein lies the challenge. If I really wanted to make the Microsoft stuff work, I would need to create multiple Microsoft courses. Creating a single course is quite literally months of my life. So whenever I start to do a project and I pick a topic, I'm going to be working on that topic for months. So for instance, the next Security Plus exam is probably going to be revamped around the end of this calendar year, beginning of next. And at that time, there will be months of my time. That's all I'm doing. Creating new content, creating the course notes, creating the videos, doing all of those things. And now suddenly 4 months have gone by. So you really have to think about what I do next. I'd love to do some courses with Mac, with Apple products. I use a lot of Apple products here, but the number of people that would need to see those videos is so small that spending months of my time to create a video that very few people would see just doesn't make sense. So I'm kind of getting you, I know that's a little inside baseball, but I'm kind of getting you inside my head about how I think about these different topics and creating them. The opposite, an idle set of videos would probably be well received, but it would just bore me to no end. I have no interest whatsoever doing that. So it's probably a good example of me completely missing on an opportunity, seeing one that's right in front of me that I have experience in. I've gone to idle training. I know about the technologies or the infrastructure library. I know about the business process management side of it, but is that something I'm interested in? Not at all. I'm not about to sit down for months of my time and have that hanging over my head. Not interested. It's sort of it's kind of the ongoing recommendation I give to anybody that if you want to do something in IT, find the thing that interests you and go do that. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's voice over IP, if it's databases, if it's operating systems, if it's servers, if it's networks, if it's security. I don't care what it is. Find the thing that interests you and learn as much as you can about that thing, because there's absolutely a place to apply that and make a job of that and have a career of that and be able to use that and have a good time with it and enjoy yourself. Don't go into server management because you see everybody says that server management makes a lot of money and that's what you should do. That is the worst possible reason, because I got to tell you, everything in IT makes money. There's nothing in IT that's not going to make you some money. That's one of the beauties of this technology, is that so few people are skilled in it, that when you become skilled in it, you now have very valuable skills. So find what you like and find the segment you like. Do you like health? Do you like working in a hospital and keeping people well? Do you like transportation and working with a train company? Do you like manufacturing and working for a company that makes garage doors or soda or and I'm trying to think about all these places I visited. Do you about a service provider, an internet service provider that makes a product or a website for selling cars or finding a job or sending mail? You know, all of these companies exist, and I'm thinking of companies that are within a drive from me. All of them need IT to some degree. Some are very IT-centric companies. Some are companies that are making soda. There's no IT in making soda, and yet there's extensive IT in making soda. Who would have thunk? Find the thing you'd like to do and go do that. What's interesting about that is the part that's really, I find really interesting about this is once you do that and you become really good at it, suddenly this river that you're on will take a turn. And suddenly you'll find yourself doing something completely different with technology that you didn't really start off doing. But that's how it works. That's the nature of the beast. Just follow, let the river take you, by the way. Don't force that. Don't try to make the boat go a different direction. Let it go that way. Because when I started with all of this, there were relatively slow networks of physical servers. There was no internet. There was no Facebook. There was no streaming video. I would have never expected this to happen, but you just got to go with it and kind of just follow it. Let it take you. It's a lot of fun that way. You can't really beat it. Well, this comes to the end of a couple of hours now that we've been on, so that's probably a good place to stop. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I want to thank everybody for the time you spent on the stream, for your questions throughout the week, for joining us live today and doing this. We do it once a month. Be sure to check back on the website at professormesser.com/calendar to find out when the next study group will be. With that, I want to thank everybody for coming this time, and we'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Thanks, everyone.